Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Shelley Epperly here. Today is Monday, January the 7th, 2019. It's 8 p.m. in New York, 5 p.m. in Los Angeles. It's after midnight, 1 a.m. in London, and if you're in Sydney, Australia, it's 12 noon. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in for yet another live stream recording of LOA Today and your daily dose of happy. And we're happy to welcome back Shelley, who is becoming a stalwart regular here on the program. And you came up with this topic without any hesitation, I have to say to the audience, Shelley. I mean, you didn't think twice about it. You said, this is the topic that we got to discuss. Was there a reason for that? I got to ask you, what was it about?
Honestly, it was a couple of days ago, I think, when I decided that, and I don't really remember what the reason was.
Oh.
I just think that it's something that I think about a lot, and I kind of point out to people a lot when I'm like kind of mentoring people that are on different law of attraction groups and that sort of thing on Facebook.
Right.
I just, when people say, I've really been trying hard and I've been going through all the steps and I've been trying to feel good and everything, and I just keep getting pulled back and pulled back and pulled back. And it's like, there's something there that's pulling you back, and it's usually your unconscious that's keeping you in your safe little place. And you don't know how to handle more money, or you don't know how to handle that's not your safe place. So,
right. Yeah. Isn't that always the way too? Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, it's a good topic you picked, I have to say, because, like you say, it's at the heart of what everybody is trying to deal with when it comes to being a deliberate creator. So, yeah, kudos to you for coming up with it, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about. This is a Q&A, so if you are listening to the live stream, and I'm already seeing people saying hello, Effine, hello, Rosina, and others are popping in too. If you're listening to the live stream and you'd like to ask a question along the lines of what our topic is, or even something that seems unrelated, which is fine. I mean, we like talking about anything related to the law of attraction. Start popping those questions in there, because we're really looking forward to it. Hi, Bronwyn. Yes, I see that you're there, too. Good to see you, too. Thanks for dropping in. The topic of blocks is something we were actually discussing yesterday. We've given it quite a bit of airplay lately, which is understandable considering how broad the topic is. It covers so many areas of life. I wanted to ask you, you made a comment. I don't even remember I don't know if you remember what the comment was that you made last night about this. Do you remember? But it seemed to me that it was just like right on track with what we were talking about.
No, I don't remember.
Don't remember? Okay. I'm not really sure myself. I remember that you said something. I was hoping you'd remember. I didn't have the transcript, but oh well, I figured I'd take a shot. No big deal.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's start this way, because I don't see. Oh, hello, Colleen. I don't see any questions coming in yet. So, let me just pose a hypothetical question. Okay. This is kind of tied into what Anne Marie and I were talking about last night. When you're dealing with a situation where stuff is taking a long time to show up, Anne Marie was suggesting that there are times where it just takes source energy or the universe or whatever label you want to apply, just takes some time to deliver it. And that sometimes you just have to be a little patient. And I took the position that Abraham takes, which is that they aren't really fans of patience, and that really the only thing that's ever holding anything up is our resistance and our blocks and so forth. And that even when it seems like the universe is taking a while because it has to kind of get everything all lined up, that's still, I was taking the position that that's still our resistance, saying, well, you know what, I think it's just going to take a while because it's hard to get this thing to line up, and so it does. So I'm curious, what's your position on that? Because, I mean, this is like one of those gray areas. You really can't give a wrong answer, I don't think. But
I am on line with Abraham on that. Mm-hmm. I feel like you could make $1 million in 10 years or 10 minutes. It just depends on where your flow is, because there are people that make $10 million in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It happens, sure.
Like that, there's people that are just at that level financially or anything. And just an example, I mean, this is just a small thing, but like today, because I'm a reseller, I'm on a lot of like barter sites and stuff like that on Facebook. And actually, it was somebody that my husband went to high school, and she lives in Portland. And she had a Christmas tree, a pre-lit Christmas tree that she just wanted to get rid of, and she put on one of these sites. And I'm like, hey, I'd take it, but I'm in Vancouver, you're in Portland, so, just give it to somebody else. And she's like, no, my son-in-law lives or works in Vancouver, I can get it over there. I'm like, cool.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm next year I want to have a big Disney tree. I just want to put all Disney stuff
A Disney tree. Oh, so you're like my wife. She likes to do specialty trees. You like to do specialty trees too. That's
yeah.
Cool.
I've never done it before, but I was kind of inspired by a post that went around this year. A bunch of people tagged me in it because they knew that I really like Disney. So I was like, okay. My husband always insists on getting a real tree, and so I said, well, I'm going to get my fake tree, and I'm going to just do it all Disney. So we'll have 2 trees.
That's
so
cool.
Anyways, so I'm supposed to meet this guy at his work, and I'm supposed to do it after I pick my son up from school, and it's kind of close to where his school is. And so I'm just kind of fretting over, okay, I need to go and pick up a prescription, I need to go to the post office and drop off a bunch of packages, and how am I going to time all this so I can get there when he gets off work, so I'm not keeping him waiting. So I'm just like, going, having a little monkey mind, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Should I leave her? And then I just stopped myself and I said, no, it's going to happen better than expected. Knock it off. It'll all just flow. I'm like, and then I just went up and not even an hour later, I checked my phone and he's texted me and he's like, I got off work early. Can you please text me your address so I can just drop it off at your house?
Nice.
So it's just like little things like that. Yeah. I was ready. I was just like, no, this is going to be easy. I need to stop fretting about every little detail about, nothing's going to go horribly wrong with this afternoon, But, so it's just like things like that. Like I just put it out there and let it go and it just happened. So that can happen. But if I would have been pushing for that, like, oh, I wish he would just drop it off at my house. Why do I have to go get it? I would never do that anyways because I'm getting a free tree. But
yeah, right.
But you know what I mean? Like You can just like push, and then you're just like, why is it not happening?
Right.
Like because you're just pushing so hard and you're being, rotten about it. So I just feel like the whole thing with the blocks, what comes into play with that is just, I feel like from like conception, where you guys were talking about that this morning, like from conception, we are getting energy from our mothers. And then as we develop in utero, I think that we can hear things and we can feel the emotions that are going on around us. And we come out into the world and we learn to behave certain ways, as we start learning the rules and, what you can and can't do and how much you can get away with. And, as you grow up and, for some of us, we've had a lot of freedom to explore all of that. And for others of us, we've been beaten down literally. We have parents that didn't put up with anything. And so you learn all those things and you hear about what money means to those people. You learn about how relationships are supposed to go. You learn about, where's a good place to live or, you learn about friendships and relationships with other people and then you take that with you and you don't even realize when you are older, you come into adulthood with all of these beliefs, but most of them aren't even yours,
Right. Yeah, that's true. And that's the tricky thing about blocks because very often they can show up in areas that we aren't even aware of because they were trained into us. That's just one kind of block, but it can show up and we don't even know it's there. You have to kind of keep your antenna up and be aware that you're getting a signal, that you're getting some kind of a clue that this is like a recurring pattern or something like that to let you know that you're running into a block that was kind of pre-programmed into you without your knowledge. So that's like one of the things you have to do in order to deal with blocks. The other thing that I notice about blocks is resistances is that you were alluding to it when you were talking about how you choose to, you kind of pre-plan the idea that everything's going to go right instead of the idea that everything's going to go wrong. And when you do that, and I want to run this by you to see what you think. I'm of the opinion that when you do that, what you're actually doing is you're directing the universe to help you move your resistances down, to basically move the blocks out of the way and lower the resistance levels, even if you don't know that they're there. And I think that's kind of like my explanation about why it is that when we're in that, what Abraham calls the high-flying place, on that high-flying disc, and we're feeling really, really good, and we're feeling happy and positive, and then we're putting out there what result we want to have, that's when it's easier for source energy to deliver stuff to us through the path of least resistance to get it to us. And I'm suggesting that when we're in that place, it's not just that we ourselves are in a path of least resistance, but I think some of the resistances that we have kind of always in the way get melted, get kind of dissolved away, and that's it kind of creates its own path of least resistance in order to deliver stuff to us. I mean, what do you think? Am I crazy, or does that sound like it's reasonable?
No, I think that's reasonable. I think that when I said that, when I just stopped myself and said, no, this is going to happen better than I expect, two things happen. I open myself up to however it's going to happen. It doesn't matter. It's just going to be better than I expected. Mm-hmm. So I'm not at no time was I like, God, I hope he just brings it over the house. I was just like, no, it'll, I'll end up going and doing my stuff, and it'll be just perfect timing, and it'll all happen the way it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. And then, so number one, I'm not saying how it's going to happen. I'm just going, it's going to happen better than expected. And then number two, I'm letting it go. And I think I've talked about this before. When you put an order in when you're at a restaurant, you don't keep stopping every busboy and every waitress going, you remember I want a cheeseburger?
Right.
And when you're doing your affirmations and you're going through all these exercises to use the law of attraction to your advantage, some people get so tied up in that, and that's pretty much what they're doing if you think about it. If you think about it being a restaurant, every time you even have a little bit of resistance, like you look down at the table and your food's not there, you're like, whoa, where's my food? And so when you go to a restaurant, you order the food, and then you're looking forward to it. It's coming. You might be really hungry. You might be really looking forward to something special that you ordered or whatever, but you get in conversation with whoever you're sitting with, and you are looking out the window and enjoying, whatever scenery is outside or whatever. And so when you just get into that kind of flow and just knowing that it's coming and having that unwavering knowing and faith that it's coming, and then when it comes, your hamburger might get there and they might, we made extra fries and we put them on your plate because you know what I mean? Like that stuff happens, and then you're just like, oh, well, that was cool. Yeah. And so I think it opens you up to less resistance because you just know it's coming, and then not how it's going to come.
Right.
I think so many people get tied up in how it's going to come. How am I going to make more money? How am I going to find my soulmate? How am I going to, have a better car? And then they get blinders on, and then they can't even see all the opportunities that are going on around them.
Right. No, it's true. It's very true. And along these lines, we actually have our first question from Colleen, who asked probably the most basic question of all. It gets right to the heart of it. How do you reprogram to remove blocks? And yeah, that's one of the big things you have to do. So how do you reprogram? What do you have any particular techniques you use?
Well, I've used two techniques. So I had a phobia with earthquakes because we had a really big earthquake in my hometown back in the early 90s, and just scared the daylights out of me. And after that, every time I would just feel a little bit of a tremor, I would just go into complete phobic panic mode.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it just, and it's just like, this isn't okay. I ran out of that when Marley was 2 weeks old. I ran out of the house without him. And it was just like, that's messed up. Get yourself together. And I ended up, to get through that, I did tapping, which is, it's called emotional freedom technique. EFT. And and I did it with a professional who knew what they were doing and specifically sat there with me and did the whole routine. And then the other thing that I've done is, and I've mentioned her before, Christy Marie Sheldon. She's kind of an intuitive, block clearer, but she has some videos on YouTube, and I've gone through, I haven't bought her program, but I have gone through some of her free videos, and I don't know how much of it was cleared, but it made me conscious of what my financial blocks were. And so when I was in a position where I was like, should I say yes to that or should I act on that? I would go, oh yeah, it's okay because that's not my issue. That was my dad's issue or my mom's issue or, you know, my family's issue or whatever. Right. And it's okay for me to take on that responsibility or that opportunity or whatever. And so, and to do that, it's pretty simple. You can just put yourself, I mean, I guess it's not totally simple. A lot of people have a hard time meditating, but I just picture it, the way she did is she just has you expand your soul basically to the universe. You just start out with like expanding it in the room and then as big as your house and as big as your town. And, you know, pretty soon you're just engulfing the universe with that was just kind of how she got you in that state of just all being connected. And then she would just say, you know, okay, now that you're here, you can start asking your unconscious mind questions, and the first thing that pops in will be the answer. So then she had you know, like if she deals with financial goals for the most, or financial blocks for the most part, and so she would just say, you know, whatever your belief was, like, okay, money's hard to get. Where did you get that? And immediately you get an answer. You know, it was from my dad. I was 4 years old. You know, he went through bankruptcy or what, you know, whatever it is, you know, right. And then and then on a conscious level, you can go, oh, so that's why dad was always so scared and so, you know, tight with his money and scared to spend it because he went through bankruptcy or he went, you know, or his dad belittled him for his finance, you know, you know, like you can just learn those things and then you can just be conscious of them. But there's definitely fast tracks to that, and the tapping was really good for me. Yeah. But I just feel like with something like that, it's really helpful to have a professional there with you, kind of guiding you through it. Okay. Because everybody has their personal, you know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think it actually depends. From my perspective, it depends what the nature of the block is. And I say that because whenever I run into a block of my own, I kind of ask myself intuitively, what's this all about and what's it going to take to clear it? And sometimes I don't know. But on those occasions, most times I get some sort of a clue what to do about it. And on those occasions where I do get a clue, the clue usually tells me, you know, what technique to use. Probably the one that I use most often is actually one I learned from Wendy Dillard, who used to do the afternoon podcast with me. She basically takes advantage of what we talked about a moment ago, about how when you're in a really good frame of mind, the universe, source energy, whatever, finds a way to help dissolve some of the blocks that are in the way and speed up how stuff's going to get delivered. So what she would do is she would get herself into a really good frame of mind and, you know, just as happy and as positive and clear as she can be. And once there, she would take a look at whatever the block was that she identified, or at least noticed that it was there. And maybe the first question would be to identify what it was, you know, what causes it or where it might come from or that kind of thing. And then she just kind of play with it from that high-flying position. And in the process of playing with it, it would almost always just kind of dissolve, kind of playing on what we talked about earlier, taking advantage of when you're in that really good feeling place, it just kind of falls apart after a while. I do try to use that. I don't really do it as well as she does it. Wendy's amazing. I mean, seriously, she not only is she great at doing that kind of process, but she has the most amazing inner dialogue with her inner Wendy of anybody that I've ever talked with. I mean, she gets entire paragraphs. She gets entire conversations, and I'm blown away by that. I'm lucky if I can get a signal of yes, I like that, or no, I don't like that. That's a good thing for me. That means I actually got a message. Her, I mean, she could write 5 paragraphs of prose based on what it is that she's getting. So it's really amazing what she does. But you don't have to be that intuitive. All you have to do is just kind of tap into it from that high flying position, and that's the key. If you're in that really good feeling position, that's where that technique works well. If you're not in a really good feeling position, I wouldn't try to do any technique if you're not in a really good feeling position. But if you're not in a really good position, I think that's where it really becomes valuable to do one of the Abraham processes that are in the back of the Ask and It Is Given book to get yourself into a better feeling place before you even try to go after a block. Because if you try to clear a block when you're not feeling good, God, those things, they just hang on like nothing. They just hang on like nobody's business. And you can just go after them and you're pounding your head against them, and they don't move. They don't go anywhere. And it's because you're not in a good feeling place. So more than a technique, I mean, my question perhaps was a little bit unfair because it's really more than a technique. It's about where you're coming from emotionally. If you're in a good feeling place, almost any technique is going to work. If you're not in a good feeling place, good luck. It's going to be hard.
I think that the techniques you use, you have to believe in too.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, because while you're talking, I read tarot cards, so there's sometimes when I'm just in a spot and I'm just like, I'll just shuffle through my deck and pick a card and go, oh, okay, that's the direction I need to go. Well, not all people are going to be open to that. They're going to be like, yeah, that's kind of woo-woo or whatever.
Right. That'd probably be one. I'd be one of those people. I actually played with tarot cards many, many years ago, and I had such a ho-hum experience with them that I have no confidence at all. So that would probably not be a technique for me to use. But you have confidence in them, and that's what makes the difference. If you have the confidence, it's certainly worthwhile doing.
Yeah, because the cards for me are just kind of tapping into my intuition. It's not like this magic, fortune telling thing. It's just like for me, the cards are just kind of like a little bit of a guide. And I find like what you're talking about, like what Wendy Dillard was able to do for herself, I find that I'm really good at doing that for other people. But when it comes to myself, because I can be in a really crappy place in my life, and bitching and complaining about everything.
Well, exactly.
My kids are like, the kids are like, Mom, you just need to be happier. And I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
They're like, Mom, that's what you would say. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I guess we're all pretty good at telling other people how they should.
Of course, it's so much easier.
But it's amazing when you can tap into that for yourself, and it sounds like she's really good at that, and that's
She really is, yeah. Well, she's also a life coach. She describes herself as a transformational coach, so that's like a key portion of what she does with her coaching. But yeah, it's. I love how you mentioned how if you're in that kind of crappy place, and you gave a beautiful example of it too. That it's a tough go. It's really tough doing stuff there. You mentioned using the EFT, the emotional freedom technique, tapping. You said that you did it with a professional. Do you do it for yourself? Do you use that technique for yourself?
I have a little bit, but there's a couple, YouTubers that do it, and they'll do it on all different things or whatever. But I just feel like when I tap along with them, they're just talking about, you have a certain block against, a good relationship or whatever, and you have to love yourself anyways. And, it's just like when that professional went through the whole earthquake with me, she brought me right back to that spot, and she was like, well, what were your thoughts when that was happening? And I was like, I thought a lot of people died. Because I saw these transformers blowing, but I thought that they were explosions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are loud. They're loud. They're very scary when they explode like that.
Yeah, and so I remember looking at my mom. I mean, I was 22, but look, I was still living at my mom's house, and my mom and I both hit the front door when it happened. And I remember after it stopped, just looking at her and going, I think a lot of people just died. So that's what, I was in that high emotional scared state, and that was my belief that when there's an earthquake, lots of people die, and it's something be super scared of. So that was such a personal experience for me that I think when you're trying to do EFT and you're just doing these general tappings or whatever, I don't feel like I know enough about it to do it for myself, to make it work for myself. And that's why I just felt really confident with this woman that helped me, because she like, her specialty is she's a veteran, and she helps veterans with PTSD get through that.
Yeah.
So basically what that was PTSD for me. You know, every time there was an earthquake, I thought everybody was going to die. And it wasn't even, I knew consciously, like 2 people died in that earthquake. One, a rock came off a mountain and smashed a car, and a like 90-year-old woman had a heart attack because it scared her so bad.
Right.
But nobody died from those transformers blowing. You know, nobody's house collapsed on them. No, it's just like, so, and I knew that consciously, but my unconscious mind knew that a lot of people died and you should be super scared of earthquakes. So that's where that block was. I couldn't think rationally. And that's where blocks come from financially, or with relationships, or with material items, or whatever your blocks are, that's where that comes in, is that unconscious mind is keeping you safe. Like, you heard your mom when you were 2, you heard your mom say, all men are, pieces of blah, and, you're just like, and you saw how upset she was, and it scared you, and you were in this high emotional state, even as a toddler, like, what's wrong with mom? And you're hearing about how horrible men are, and then you go into life like that, and you're like, why can't I find a good man? Well, because all men are jerks. I got that at 2 years old, and I don't even know that happened.
Yeah.
She might find a man in a couple of years and live happily ever after, and she was just in a highly emotional state and fed that to you, and then you wonder why you can't ever find a good man. And that's why. And you have to find those little nuggets or whatever and get rid of them, so you can have those happy times. And those will just keep bringing you back. Like I said, your unconscious mind goes, well, all men are jerks, or all earthquakes kill a whole bunch of people. So that it just keeps bringing you back to that.
Right.
So that's where it's really important to get rid of those blocks,
Yeah, I agree with you. That is a great description of an example of a hidden block that we didn't really know was there. And you're right. That is a time when it's useful to have a professional helping you out to kind of guide you through. Very often we have strong, negative, emotionally based associations with these hidden events. And because we're trying to make sense out of them, I mean, emotions, especially when our emotions are not clear to us what it is, what we're feeling, or why we're feeling it, or whatever, that's where it's useful to have somebody else to kind of help walk us through it, because we're trying to deal with the emotion. We don't. Our rational mind isn't really engaged at that point, which it shouldn't be, because you need to be dealing with the emotional side of it. That's where that outside perspective really helps a whole lot. So I understand why you want to have that help. That makes sense to me. The thing that I've noticed about, and by the way, this is a Q&A, so we did get that one question from Colleen, but we aren't done there. If you have questions and you're listening to the live stream, by all means, share your questions in the comments section on Facebook on our LOA Today page, and we'll be glad to address them. But where I was going was, I kind of described with Anne-Marie last night that it's possible for us to request something, and there are any number of blocks in the way of various kinds for various stages of the delivery path, for lack of a better term. And we may not know what they all are. Some of them may be invisible to us. Some of them we may know about. We've dealt with them before, and we never really successfully cleared them, or partially cleared them, or something like that. So we have all these little blocks that are in the way. That, to me, is probably the most challenging part about it, is, first of all, you don't really know how many blocks are in the way. Hopefully there's only one, or maybe two, because it makes it a lot easier if you only have one or two. But if you've got more than that, it can be kind of confusing, because you go to work on block number one, and maybe it's a big one. Maybe it's something that's been hanging around since you were 2, like you were describing. And then you clear it.
Right.
And you say, oh, great, I just cleared it. And then it still doesn't show up. You say, well, wait a minute, I cleared the block. What's going on here? It's because there's another block in the way. And that's probably the thing that defeats most people more often than anything else. Having not just one block, but multiple blocks and not realizing it and not knowing what to do about it. Have you run into that?
Right. Personally?
Mm-hmm.
I think a little bit. I mean, I had some real big, this last year, I had some real big financial blocks moved, and, you know, I kind of give Christy Marie Sheldon's, technique some credit for that, because it really felt like that. And there was a couple other YouTubers that I watched that, talk a lot about finances and, but there's still, I keep getting pulled back, and so my question right now for myself is, am I getting pulled back because there's another block I need to get through, or am I getting pulled back because I'm just falling back into old habits, which I guess could be the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's two ways of saying the same thing. I've thought about it in terms of my own situation on a number of things that I'm working on now and that I've worked on in the past, where, kind of along the lines of what I just described, I clear something. I find a block and I clear it, and yet the thing isn't showing up. And I'm asking myself, well, now what is it? What could it possibly be? And as you're going through a journey where you're experiencing, okay, here's one block I cleared. Here's another one I cleared. Here's another one I cleared. As you clear them, things start to shift, obviously, because we've just reduced the resistance of the overall path. And they start to shift in ways where experientially you ask yourself, well, why did that happen? It doesn't seem connected to any of the things that you've been asking for, but there's all of a sudden this shift, this thing that happened. I'm thinking right now of when Louise and I moved from Virginia back to Connecticut after living in Virginia for 11 years. And we actually wrote about this in the book that we published last May. The story was a multifaceted story because it involved moving out to a new state, a new job for Louise. Our cars were both worn out, both needed to be replaced. We had just inherited 4 cats. We can only take 2 of them with us. And we were doing all this with not enough money. So there was like a whole bunch of stuff that was all tied together in this knotted ball of yarn. It was kind of a mess.
Right.
And while we're going through it, there were any number of instances along the way where we would successfully, I'll call it clear a block or remove a resistance level, and then the storyline would shift. But it wouldn't seem to shift in a way that would solve any of the problems. We'd say, well, now what do we do with that? The example that comes to my mind for that particular story is we had driven up from Virginia to Connecticut to A, try to find a place to live, and B, to find a job for Louise. And we came up in October of what year was it? I guess it was 2013. And when we got here, we went to the same apartment complex that we used to live in, to the people who owned that one, and tried to find out were there any apartments available. We'd actually checked in advance, found out there was one, and drove up here with the idea, okay, we're going to meet with the maintenance guy. He's going to show us the apartment. We can sign off on it. We'll be good to go. Got up here, and the apartment was gone. Not only was the apartment gone, but the maintenance guy didn't even respond to our phone calls. So on the day we were supposed to meet with him, he's gone. He's unreachable. And we're sitting here like, well, we just drove up 550 miles to get here, or whatever it was. It was a long trip, And we're thinking, well, how does this help us with our agenda? Actually, it was clearing a space that I can see now, but at the time, that just seemed like a major defeat. And on top of that, she'd had a job interview. We went to the job interview, and she hated it. So we actually drove back from Connecticut to Virginia with no job and no apartment, and even less money than we had before, still trying to figure out how we're going to pay for the whole move. When you're in the middle of something like that, you say to yourself, I'm not gaining ground, I'm losing ground. Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like, right? As it turned out, we were actually gaining ground, we just didn't know it. Because what happened was, about 2 months later, we didn't know what else to do, so we just drove north again in January. Actually, it was in December. And when we drove north the second time, the contact we had made the first time about finding the apartment had led us to another contact, which led us to a realtor who was the guy who originally sold the land to the landlord who had built all these apartments. It wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had that first visit. And on top of that, this guy not only knew the landlord, but he also knew all the properties he sold to him, including one that we didn't know about. He said, well, did you ask about this property? And we said, what property? We never heard of that one. I ended up calling the landlord back the next day. Do you have any apartments? No, we had just called the apartment office earlier that day that we talked to the realtor. That very same day, we called them up. And they said, no, there are no apartments at the complex. Call them up the next day and ask them about this other complex that we never heard about. Oh, yeah, there's 2 apartments available there. Now, why didn't they tell us about those the first day? I have no idea. But because of that chain of events, we knew to ask about that apartment. And sure enough, it was there, and that's the one we ended up getting. So now all of a sudden, we had an apartment where before we didn't have one. There's no way that could have happened if we hadn't had the failure the first time around, or what seemed like a failure.
Right. And
the resistance that I associate with that is we went on that first trip, and I tell you, I wasn't feeling good about it at all. I had no confidence. I mean, I had been studying law of attraction for a few years, but I really didn't have the handle on it yet. I didn't have the feel on it. I'd been doing the podcast for about a year, but I'd actually taken some time off for a few months because I'd run out of guests, and I just didn't know where to go with it. It seemed more like it seemed like an egotistical exercise than anything else. It didn't seem like it was going anywhere, you know? So, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in how the whole thing would work. I mean, sometimes it seemed like it worked. Most of the time it didn't work, and I didn't understand why we were in this financial pickle we were in. And I mean, you know, I wasn't in a good frame of mind at all. Louise, I'm not sure what her frame of mind was. I think it was probably pretty good because she was the one who was really enthusiastic about moving back to Connecticut, much more than I was. But I know that frame of mind didn't help much. Now here's the interesting part. By the time the second visit came along, my frame of mind hadn't improved a whole lot except for one key detail. I'd kind of thrown in the towel. Because I couldn't figure out how, you talked about the house, trying to avoid the house. It's not like I consciously avoid the house. It's like, I give up, I can't figure out the house. I quit. That was the attitude I had taken. And so it actually put me in a less resistant place so that when we made that second trip, everything started to flow into place. And I'm thinking, what the hell's happening here? I don't understand this.
The whole time you were saying that, like, when people ask me, they're just like, everything's going wrong and I don't know what to do. And I'm just like, just stop.
Yeah.
Like, just stop and go do something that makes you feel better. I don't care if it's a round of golf or a bowl of ice cream or, you know, take your dog for a walk or go watch a TV show. Like, go do something that is going to be the total opposite of what you're pushing against, you know? Yep. And like you said, like, just give up on it. Like, I was just on a live call or not live call, but, another reseller did a live video today and she's just burnt out and she's like literally crying on the video, you know, and it's just like, and I don't know her very well. Like some of the other resellers that I know pretty well, and I'm just like, I don't know you, but I sure would love to give you a hug right now, you know, and I'm just like, go do something that you enjoy. Like, don't try to keep listing and taking photographs and pushing yourself so hard. Like, just, you know, take a day and go do something else. Like, because, and number one, in that state of mind when you're frustrated and irritated and you just feel so icky and whatever you do is just going to go the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. It's like the whole Abraham thing where you're just paddling upstream. You're just paddling and paddling and paddling and not going anywhere. It's just like, let go. Mm-hmm. You might hit a few rapids, but you won't be, you know, you'll still get to the bottom and it'll be fine, you know? And
rapids is the correct word. Seriously, rapids exactly is what the correct word, because the rest of that story that I was telling you, that was December. And we remember that trip back from Connecticut to Virginia after she had gotten the apartment. Actually, the same day that we got the apartment, she also got a job interview and got the job. So we had all that straightened out at one point. And we're feeling like, oh, well, maybe this actually can work out. Still didn't know how we were going to pay for all of it, but I felt like, hey, at least something's working. It made me feel better, you know, kind of along the lines you were talking about. And we remember that trip back because we left Connecticut. This is weird. We left Connecticut. It was 45 degrees Fahrenheit. we were driving down through Pennsylvania. When we got to Pennsylvania, the temperature had plummeted to 0. And by the time we got to Virginia, it was in the minus territory. So it's like this huge plunge. We're watching the how the cars have a thermometer on it, telling you what the temperature is.
Yeah.
We're watching it go down, 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 down. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? We were just having this really good day, and now all of a sudden we're going downhill again. And, showing that my frame of mind wasn't really in a strong frame of mind. But there was at least enough good feeling there that when we got home, it gave us enough of a clear path for a whole bunch of other things to happen. And I won't tell the whole story because it's a very involved story, but I'll give you like the broad brush of it. We had 2 weeks to move because we had to get back in time for her to take her new job. In that 2-week period, we not only came up with the money to make the move, hired the movers, arranged to get our 2 dying cars up here, had to sell one of them at the last second because I was pretty sure it wasn't going to make it anyway. On the day we sold it, it was out of oil entirely, and the buyer bought it anyway. On the day of the move, the other car was supposed to be towed behind the moving van. The moving van owner comes up and says, no, we can't tow it. So now we have this car. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. One of his team buys the car on the spot. We have a rental car. They pack the truck up. They take off for Connecticut. We pack the cats. 2 of the cats we had to take to a shelter. The other 2 we were taking with us. Pack them in the car. Pack the remaining stuff in the car. This is a rental car. We're driving north. We realize we don't own a car. We have no vehicle to our name. We get up to Connecticut. They move us in. We go out to go car shopping, and the second car dealer we go to gets us into 2 brand new cars at approximately 1/3 to 1/2 off their normal price. All that happened in a 2-week period. It was the craziest damn roller coaster ride I've ever had in my life. And as we're riding it, we're saying, what the hell is going on? What's happening? It was that kind of a feel to it. I know now, if I had understood better the importance of being in that high-flying place and staying there, regardless of what's going on, it would have been a much less chaotic trip. And I suspect probably the same thing was true with Louise. Even though she was more enthusiastic about the move than I was, I think she was still feeling the stress of it. In fact, I know she was, because when it came time to writing that for the book, she couldn't even handle going back and looking at it again to write the story. I had to write the story. So it was definitely affecting both of us for sure. But if we'd been in a better flying place, I'll bet you that everything would have been much more smooth than it was, and a lot less of a roller coaster. But nevertheless, you can see how we had just released enough resistance that the universe found ways to clear the path and get us to the result that we needed to have. And, oh, by the way, the 4 cats, 2 of which we kept, the other 2 we had to take to a shelter. We ended up getting homes for them, so that turned into a happy ending as well.
Nice.
It was wild.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. So.
That's awesome.
Jeffrey has just sent a notice thanking us for sharing the stories. He says it gives him a humorous look into the possibilities of the future. Yeah, humorous when you're not actually in the middle of it. It's very funny when you're looking on the outside. It's not so much fun when you're in the inside, but yeah, it is fun, and they're funny stories. And Valerie is saying hello to you. I kind of guess you know Valerie.
Yeah.
Yep. Don't have any other questions that I'm seeing. This is a Q&A, so feel free to ask questions by typing them into the comments section, or even join us on the Blue Jeans platform. There's a link in the description there if you're listening to the live stream. Obviously, if you're listening to the recorded podcast, you can't really do that so much. But you can do what others have done, because we have gotten emails and people filling in the form on the contact page of our website, loatoday.net, and we bring those up on the show too. So either way, even if it's not going to be on today's podcast, you can always just reach out to us and we'll include it on a future podcast. But feel free to include any questions if you're listening to the live stream, and we'll include them here. In the meantime, we'll just go back to our storytelling and sharing our experiences and so forth with blocks and resistances. I mean, do you have a favorite go-to story of yours that you think of whenever you're thinking about what it takes to remove a resistance or a block, something that's gotten in the way, something that has been hanging over you, maybe something from childhood, maybe something recent? I mean, it could be almost anything, but anything come to mind?
I mean, I think that I told the story before about my tires. Well, I guess that's just like a little thing like what happened today. Like I don't know. I think just the financial thing for me was the biggest thing. Like we you know, my marriage is great, you know, kids keep you going, but, you know, I have good relation, you know, even when things get rocky with the kids, it always ends good because, you know, we're just, you know, an I love you, drive safe kind of family, you know, and, but the money thing was just always the thing. And as far as blocks go, like that's been my biggest clearing of the blocks, you know, and when I was talking to the gal that did the EFT, the tapping with me, she had come, the reason I met her is because I went to like a weekly law of attraction group when I first moved up into this area. And she would come and be like the special guest and she would just talk to us about it and stuff. And I just remember it clicking for me because, you know, I knew that the subconscious mind could hold you back and keep you, you know, you could have these blocks, but I didn't understand why it did that. Like, why would it, you know, you hear people like winning the lottery and then, you know, 2 years later they're back to paycheck because they just blew it all or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and I'm just like, why does that happen? And she just looked at me and she goes, because it keeps you safe.
Yes.
That's what it's doing. It's keeping you safe.
Yeah.
Well, you think that you want that, but, and you do, consciously you want it. You know that lottery winning or that, you know, beautiful new house or that amazing new body is going to make you happy, but you have a program, just like you put programs in your computer. You have a program that is telling you you can't have that body or you can't have that relationship. And it's not because it's a cruel, you know, like there's something wrong with you and your subconscious is mean. It's because there was some experience that you had and some influence that you had that made you believe that on a very emotional level. You know, like I have a lot of overweight women in my family. And I heard that all throughout my life. You know, oh yeah, this is just how we are. But then I look at my grandma, the mom of these, you know, women, and she was as skinny as a rail her whole life. So it's like how is then that's not true. You know what I mean? And I don't even really understand why. I guess just because they're influential people in my life and I've been hearing it since I was a little kid and seeing it, you know, that you just get to that belief point, you know, that yeah, you know, you're going to be overweight because you're part of this family. Get over it, you know.
It's interesting how those stories they kind of evolve almost on a myth-like basis. They become a family myth that just carries on, and it can actually carry on generationally, which is where it really becomes kind of stuck in, and can take even more time to root it out. But yeah, that's something Louise has told me about quite a bit, because I don't know if I told you, she was a psychotherapist for 10 years and did a lot of work with family issues. She was a marriage and family therapist, and the stories that she would tell me really underlined how generationally stuff carries along. I mean, in this case, with your family, it sounds like it was just this is first generation, which was probably good because it probably makes it easier for your family members to figure out what's going on there. But for some people who have it for generation after generation, like alcoholism, carrying on for 3, 4, 5 generations, I mean, you get to the point where you can hardly even clear the original problem, whatever it is, because it's so deeply buried in there. You basically have to deal with the symptom of, well, you're an alcoholic. What are you going to do about being an alcoholic? You know, go through AA and all that kind of stuff. Because it's just so deeply ingrained, unless you've got a really good EFT person, you know, or somebody like Linda Armstrong who clears all your energies from all years and all generations and every aspect of your life and being for, 1,300 lives before or whatever it is. But, it can be quite the challenge. No doubt about it.
Well, the story that I think about that's kind of humorous with that, and I don't remember where I heard it, but it was like this woman, she's making a ham for a family dinner and she cuts off the ends of the ham and she puts it in the pan and she cooks it, and her daughter watches her do this for years, growing up, like, when you make a ham, you cut off the ends. And so she finally asked her, Mom, why are you doing that? She's like, well, I don't know. That's what Grandma did. Like, that's what you're supposed to do when you cook a ham. So they went to Grandma and they're like, why did you do that? And she said, because my pan wasn't big enough.
I love it.
So, so that's just like a kind of silly example, but it's true. Like things like that, like recipes and cooking and techniques of life, and so those things are just little and kind of silly, but there's huge things. There's huge things that you can't believe on a unconscious level that are keeping you right where you're at.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the key is to find those and figure out how to be conscious of them and how to clear them and give them back, or whatever is best for you or whatever. Just to go, oh, that has nothing to do with me. That wasn't me. That was their fear, or their hang up, or
It's great when you can get that to that level of what's going on generationally. Find out that yes, it really was what Mom was dealing with, and that she was dealing with this issue. And when you can get down to that level of detail, that's powerful, because that means you're going to eliminate that block pretty quickly. Jeffrey has a question for us. He says, what are some blocks around money you have had, and how did you get over or through them? Which is a good question, a really good question, because probably, I don't know what you think, but I found that the most common kind of difficulty that people have is attracting money. There are people who have trouble with relationships, and there are people who have lots of money who have trouble with relationships or trouble with health or whatever. So it's not like there's nobody who has other kinds of issues with attracting stuff using the law of attraction. But I think money is number one. And I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of disagreement about that. Most of my coaches will agree with me on that one too. So money, I mean, you went through that. You have direct experience with that. Anything you can share, any tips or any ideas on how to break through?
Well, I did a couple things. I figured out what my blocks were through doing some pretty simple meditation and just asking where they came from and how old I was when I heard them and what it was all about. And as soon as I was aware of those things, it was just so much easier for me to, when I did have an opportunity to make money or think about money, I could start thinking about it in a different way. I could start feeling about it in a different way. And the other thing that just kind of went along with that was there was a couple mantras or, little sayings that I would say to myself, because I would get, when it was time to, things as simple as like, okay, I need to put lunch money in Marley's account at school, or I got to put gas in the tank, or, the dog needs, her shots, or what, things that are just going to be like, 20 or $50 here and there, like, nothing major. I would find myself just just in the pit of my stomach, like almost in my chest, just like kind of tightening up and just being like, oh, like, and I would stop myself and say two things. I would say, I say yes to money, and I love money because it comes when I call it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like those things just kind of, those three things, knowing what my blocks were, saying yes to money, and loving money, all changed, and I was able to step back from those emotional reactions that I would have about anything that came up, And one of the examples, and I don't know if I've said this before about my tires on my van.
You mentioned them one time, yes.
Yeah. So I just, long story short, I needed new tires. I was fretting about it driving down the road as my van was literally shaking because the alignment was all messed up and the tires were messed up. And I was just finding myself just in that spot of just like, like, how the hell am I going to get the money to do this? Like, we don't have it. And I just stopped myself, and I'm in the car alone, so I'm like, talking out loud to myself, and I'm like, no, it's all going to work out. It's going to be better than I expected. I love money. I say yes to money. And then I just let it go and turned up the radio and went on running my errands and stuff. And literally, it wasn't even an hour later, I came home and checked the mail, and the remainder of our rent deposit from our other house was in the mail.
Oh, right.
And it was exactly what we needed to put tires on the van. And in that moment, I wasn't going, oh my God, I can't, it was like, oh, okay, it works. Like, thank you, universe. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I just did that little shift. And so I just started doing that with everything. And I ended up inheriting over $100,000 this last year.
Woo.
I lost my grandma in the midst of it. But she was, like those things that just click and happen the way they're supposed to. Like, she was literally about to go into a nursing home, which would have devastated her.
Oh, right.
And she was in the hospital, and she passed away in the hospital. And everybody that was involved, I mean, I'm super sad. I had a really good relationship with her. But it was just one of those things where it was like, it happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen, and it happened at the right time. And, I remember telling my aunt, who was in charge of her estate, if I would have got this money a year ago, it would have been a disaster, but I got it at the right time. I'm in the right frame of mind for it. We did, we had some fun with it. We did some, paying off of things and stuff like that. I shared it with my brother, and so it's just like, it just, in that moment, I was just like, of course I'm going to get over $100,000. Like, of course I am.
Which is great. That's the right mindset. That's really good.
Yeah. And I knew my grandma had money, but I was getting some, but I had no idea. And I was open to whether I got $20,000 or if I got, several hundred. I was just open. I was just like, whatever it is, it's more than I have now, and I'm going to be so grateful for it. And and it's just, so as that money is starting to go away for different reasons, that's where I'm starting to get like tightened up a little again. And I have to go, no. Yes to money. I love money. Hey, we still have plenty. Like, I don't need to get all worked up about it. It's fine.
Well, this is what I was talking before about how there can be multiple blocks. This is what I mean by multiple blocks, because I don't think we don't clear them all at once. We clear them over time. Right. And that's what you've been doing. You've been clearing over time. And as you clear them, it becomes easier and easier to flow the money in. I've been going through the same thing. I mean, I can't say that I have completely licked the financial situation, but it's gotten so much better. And probably one of the biggest ones for me was, you alluded to it kind of indirectly, but for the longest time, it was always the money would show up at just the last possible second to save us. And it was like that, like clockwork, every year, year after year after year. And Louise pointed out to me that was the case, and I said, well, yeah, I guess it is true. But boy, I'm sick of it. I really want that to stop, So there I was identifying a block. And one of the things I've taken to doing to alleviate that, I can't remember where I heard this. I picked it up someplace. But somebody suggested that whenever a bill comes in, don't wait. Pay it immediately, so that you don't allow yourself to fret over the fact that the bill needs to be paid and where's the money going to come from. Just pay it with whatever money you've got and get it off your plate. I mean, I have a history of having the same kind of a reaction with taxes, the taxes you have to do every year. Not just because of doing the income tax, but also because we both have businesses, so there's also the Schedule C's and all the stuff that goes along with that, and the payrolls, all that kind of craziness. So I've had plenty of issues where, emotionally I just have not been able to handle doing the taxes well, even though that's my task to do in the family. And this year, I'm actually going to break the mold. I'm going to actually get the taxes done early. I kind of have to for a particular reason. But I'm just getting it off my plate as fast as I can so I don't fret about it. And that, just even thinking about that helps. That just kind of removes a little bit more of that resistance. And that's really what it's all about, is one step at a time, one resistance level here, one here, one here. You just keep moving them, dissolving them, getting them out of the way, and eventually you run out.
I think it's important when you're going through that process, too, of paying your bills or paying your taxes, it's important to be grateful for what those are going for. Yes, very true. What I mean? Like you're not just paying this, bill that you have no idea what it's for, and you don't, you're paying your light bill and you're paying your water bill, and when you turn on your faucet, water comes out, and when you turn on your light, the light comes on, and so it's important to just get in that habit of everything that, as much as when you're getting money and you're like, oh, thank you for that money, when it goes back out, thank you for that opportunity to let that money flow through me and to get this whatever in return.
Absolutely.
And I think the whole thing with, how do you get it faster and everything, you have to realize too, this is just a journey. We're all on a journey, and you have to make it as fun and happy as you can.
It's true.
And the more fun and the more happy you decide to be, because it's a choice, the faster things will come, and the more fun and happy you'll be. So it's a win-win,
We're actually a little bit over, but we got another good question, so I figure we'll bring this one in. We'll make this the last question for the night. Jeffrey's asking, so how do we get over the idea that we have to work hard to make money? Because he's right, that's a big portion of what many of us have to deal with, this feeling that we have to work hard. And yet, as Abraham points out, you don't have to, none of this has to be hard. You actually are better off making it as easy as you possibly can. So, I mean, what approach do you take for making it easy for yourself so you don't feel like you have to work hard?
Yeah, well, I've never been really good at doing things I don't enjoy. Like from a little kid, I've always, picked the easier, more fun path. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what I've done, And I've had businesses that I enjoy. I've had jobs that I don't enjoy, but I don't last long in ones that I really hate because, but I think that number one, you have to work hard for money comes from blocks, because that's coming from someone teaching you that that's what you have to do. And number two, I think it's important to find those people out in the world that are making plenty of money, doing what they love, and having a blast doing it. And it doesn't mean that like every second of the day they're just in complete bliss and happiness, but they wake up every morning excited about what they get to do today. And that's how I feel like my life is. There are days where I'm just like, but for the most part, I get up and I'm excited about what my day is going to bring.
Right.
And you have to, if you're working a job you don't like, or that it's a dead end job and it's not going to take you anywhere financially, I think you have to start making the little changes to, do you want to be a football coach? Do you want to be a barista? Do you want to be a horse trainer? Whatever it is, start doing that. And it doesn't mean you have to quit your whole life and start over from scratch. It means that if you want to be a football coach, look on the websites of the local schools and see if there's an assistant job that you can get into. If you want to be a horse trainer, get a horse and start going to a stable, or find a trainer that you can work under, whatever. You can still do that and make that money that you're supposed to be making to pay all the bills that you're supposed to be paying right now.
I love the fact. I'm sorry.
And there are opportunities where you can just quit everything and drive off into the sunset. Not all of us can do that because we have kids and mortgages and stuff. But even that, like my husband's little cousin, she just sold everything, and her husband moved with their two little kids to Thailand.
Wow.
And they're living in Thailand. And you could, it's a choice.
It is. That's a big step. That's a big choice right there. But yeah, you could go that way.
It's a huge step. And that's what I'm saying. Like, so many people are like, well, I can't quit my job right now. I got this mortgage. Well, don't quit your job, but go find a part-time, whatever that, a job at a coffee shop, or,
And I love what you said about the importance of finding something that you love. I mean, because you mentioned that you can't do a job unless you like it, which I think is actually probably a very good thing. I did a lot of jobs over my lifetime that I was good at, and in many cases made good money, but I didn't like it. I didn't really love it at all. I did it because I was good at it, not because I was loving it. And oh boy, that will just wear you down. It just destroys you. Talk about creating a negative attitude. Does that ever create a negative attitude? So I'm totally on board with you. It's really important. And if you don't know what it is, I mean, I didn't know what mine was for the longest time. You know when I found out what my first real passion was in life? When I started doing this podcast. Up until then, I couldn't find anything. I literally had no idea what I could do that would be enjoyable.
I have done so many things. Like, it's the joke around the house. I'm, like, if one of the kids gets hurt or something, I'm like, well, I used to be a doctor, so let me look at it, and they all laugh. Because I have, like, done real estate. I've worked in a truck shop. I've worked in a call center. I just have spent my life kind of playing through all these jobs.
And I found
reselling. I've been doing it for almost 20 years and I love it, but I'm starting to get burnt out on that. And so now I'm training to be a travel agent and I'm just doing it for fun. Like, I'm going to do it for fun. I'm going to do it to learn about, to help people travel and to travel myself and to make some money on the way. And, and it's just like, I'll try that.
Sure.
And so far I'm having more fun doing that than I have with anything else I've tried in the last several years, but it's have to play a little with that.
I just have to mention one other note here. Lem's just tuned in and says he's in the Philippines and he's just having breakfast while watching us. So thank you for joining us during breakfast, Lem. That was great. Unfortunately, we're well past time. We're about 6 minutes past, so hopefully the folks at PRN won't get too upset that I gave them a show that's more than an hour long. But it's been well worthwhile. I mean, it took a while to get the questions coming, but they started coming hot and heavy toward the end there, and we had to get them all in, so that was good. But thank you for bringing up this topic, because blocks of resistance are a big deal for sure. And I think we barely touched the surface. We could probably do like 5 or 6 shows on it. But yeah, this is a good one. Yeah. So thank you for that. And thank you for our live stream listeners for sharing your questions and for tuning in. We really love you for that. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.